Vines. I'm here in my garage outside of Yelm, Washington with my friend Kyle Case. Kyle is running the camera, so he's not on film right this moment. We're a couple of MG enthusiasts.
Sit back, sip your English tea. You might just learn something. After all, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
I wanted to just show you a few things on this 18V engine to familiarize you with just the major components. Basically, here we have our thermostat housing. This is where the water from the engine comes. Once it's opened up, it'll rotate out of this pipe through the radiator hose and into the top of the radiator for cooling. We'll talk about cooling system more later. The water jacket for the engine cylinders is here. The water pump would set right in this hole, and I do have that, but I haven't fitted it yet. Put in a new set of dual row timing gears. I wished we'd have done some video why this was off, but I do have that set up, and the new harmonic balancer and all together and ready for engine mounts and other things. Looking at this engine, this is the left side of the engine as viewed from the driver's seat, this being the front. The cylinder head is this narrow area here that houses the valves, rockers, push rods, valve springs, intake and exhaust ports. This is all part of the engine breathing system here, engine breather that comes out here, and this is just basically an access cover to the tappet galley. This is one of the small holes that I have to plug right here, and then this will be covered with a blanking plate. This is where, when they had engine-driven fuel pumps, it would go there, and I believe some of the racing engines were set up that way. However, for just a driver, that's not needed. Oil pressure relief valve, and this is just a galley plug here. So I have another hole here, as you can see, almost the size of my little finger, that needs to be plugged, and also another one down here at needs a brass. Now we'll talk a little bit about the valve train on this cylinder head. Basically, you have two valves for each cylinder. One's an intake valve, one is an exhaust valve. These are driven from the camshaft by these push rods, and there's 8 of those down here. And as you can see, these are mechanically adjusted for tension, and then the rocker sets here and runs back and forth. I don't have these set up yet as far as height, because I'm waiting to mount it on an engine stand so I can rotate it, but those are your major components of your rocker shaft and valve train. While we're discussing the right side of the engine, if Kyle can follow me here, here are 3 of the other holes that need brass blanking plugs. There's one hidden up under this flange, 2 of them here and here, and that's a cross-drilled oil passage. So there's 3 on that side of the engine that need to be plugged. So there were several that got removed that I wish they hadn't, although I know my block got very clean. We were discussing the Welsh plugs, or the freeze plugs. These are basically a dished steel plug that you put in with a little bit of Loctite sealant, and then you hammer the centers in, and that expands the plug so that it will fit tightly. And what this is for, as you can see, I can reach my hand in the water jacket. I can actually touch the back of this Welch plug with my fingers. If for some reason you don't have enough antifreeze in your engine and the engine were outside and got too cold, as that ice expanded, rather than breaking your engine block and requiring a replacement of all of that, it'll expand these and push them out of place. And that can be a fail-safe for your engine. One of the other things we didn't discuss earlier was right up here on the side of the head. And this little outlet is the hot water outlet for the heater control valve that controls the hot water that runs through the heater core and gives you heat for inside the MGB, and it generally works pretty well. As we go together with the rest of this engine, I'll be showing you some of these little details as we go. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the valve train on this cylinder head. Basically, you have 2 valves for each cylinder. One's an intake valve, one is an exhaust valve. These are driven from the camshaft by these push rods, and there's 8 of those down here. And as you can see, these are mechanically adjusted for tension, and then the rocker sets here and runs back and forth. I don't have these set up yet as far as height, because I'm waiting to mount it on an engine stand so I can rotate it. But those are your major components of your rocker shaft and valve train. On the right side of the engine, as viewed from the driver's seat, once again we have our spark plug holes. Up here is where the smog control air galley would go. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These bolts were in it when I bought it. I'll probably go with a little bit more of a Allen head hex plug. New freeze plugs or Welch plugs in the block. Distributor timing gear. We're going to do some work on that later, and we'll do a whole nother video on that. More oil pressure outlets here. This is to feed the oil filter, which would mount here. I have a remote mount filter that comes out at an angle, and you can use a spin-on oil filter, more modern oil filters. Some of the old oil filters would thread right into this case, and they were exceptionally messy every time you tried to change the oil. Well, while I'm waiting for some of these brass plugs to come in, there's not a whole lot more I can do to the engine at this point. So what I've been doing is spending some time doing detail painting and cleaning up in the engine compartment, so that when I get this engine put together, get the gearbox cleaned up and together, I'll have a place to store the engine, which will be back in the car. I'll go ahead and mount it, and that way I can continue with the rest of the restoration. It's not spotless at this point. I have spent some time in here cleaning up already, and you know, peeling back fuel lines and brake lines and throttle lines and tachometer cables and you name it. But anyway, some of the major components that you encounter in the engine compartment is the rack and pinion for your steering. And at some later point in time, I'll be removing the entire front end out from under this vehicle, replacing all the bushings, and at that time I will take the main cross member, have it blasted and powder coated. However, until that time, I want to make it look well and function well. The MGB is basically a unibody car. This channel that runs along both sides of the engine compartment is the main portion of the frame of the vehicle that the rest of the items are bolted to or supported by. These 4 bolts here are what would let your whole front end drop out from under the car. The front axles, spindles, A-arms, the pinion gear, etc., etc. As you can see, engine rubber mounts, motor mounts set here and here. And this one I haven't taken off yet because, as you can see, they run the steering shaft directly through there, and it makes it relatively hard to get to the back of this engine mount on this side. What I have been doing is trying to clean up approximately 60,000 miles worth of road grime, oil, dirt, sand that has accumulated on this engine, and get it to a point where I can get a decent coat of paint to stick to it. I've done that numerous ways. I've used putty knives, I've used wire brushes, I've used toothbrushes with mineral oil, dental picks, any number of little tricks to get it there. And I'm down to the point now where I'm just kind of into the final cleaning on this side before paint. And you know, I do still have small amounts of oily and greasy residue along here that I'll clean up with rags and with toothbrushes, and then I'll touch some of this up with sandpaper and get it smooth. This is where I believe brake fluid or something has been spilt in the past, and it's kind of left an impervious coating there, so that'll all be sanded off and smoothed down. And then, of course, once again, this will all be painted blue so that when my engine's in here, it will look pretty. Today, we're just going to concentrate on this main area, getting this side cleaned up and painted, and then we won't need to show the other side because it'll be just more drudgery. So very tedious work.